Philosophers talk to our times, the anthropologists have to say. In a book that if you get nothing else from this series, I hope you read, called Witchcraft and Oracles Amongst the Azandi, written in 1937, the great anthropologist Pritchard, who was a fine writer, pinpoints, for me, one of the deep truths about society that the pressures of modernity has made us totally lose sight of. The gap between what people say they do and what they actually do. Let me explain. In the book, Witchcraft Amongst the Azandi, Pritchard researches in the Nilotic Basin are people who believe in witchcraft. I mean, they really believe in witchcraft. But for them, witches are not crones going off to far off forests and eating babies. Oh no. A witch is something spiritual, but the spirit is tied to an organ. Pritchard speculates it might be gallstones, somewhere down the bottom of the stomach. And if you have this organ, this hard kernel, you are a witch. And if you are a witch, you can jinx people. You can wish them ill luck. You can cause them ill fortune. To be a witch, then, was something you inherited, and it was something you didn't know you were, or perhaps you didn't. If you asked the Azandi, they would say, of course witches know who they are. You can't have this organ and hex people without knowing. And so it was. They would have an elaborate theology in which witches were blamed for all malfeasance, all ill luck. You didn't go to the university you wanted. That's a witch. Your crops fail. That's a witch. You've got a cold on the day of your daughter's wedding. Yep, definitely witchcraft. All the ill luck, then, and all the furies of the world were poured into this idea of witches. Witches must be found and destroyed. At least that's what they said they did. And to find them, they would feed certain chickens, ceremonial chickens, grain that was laced with strychnine. Now, strychnine is normally chickens will survive strychnine, they just shit it out. But once in a way they don't. And if the chicken died when a name was suggested to it, that was the witch. So far, no doubt, this is sounding like the ducking school in Europe. And you're all going, well, we all know what happens now. Poor people are killed. But this is where the second part of the idea came in. So, those who enacted the rituals, the witch doctors, would go and talk to the witch. And the witch always invariably said exactly the same thing. That while witches in general, of course, knew what they were doing, and of course were malevolent, they weren't a witch. Or if they were a witch, they didn't know they were a witch. And if they did know they were a witch, they wouldn't have wished ill luck on this person. But anyway, they'll do the ablution ritual. They will apologise in public. They will sanctify their own body to try and rid it of the witchcraft. And they were very sorry if it was them, but it wasn't them. So, faced with an accusation of witchcraft, the would-be witch always appealed to their own good nature. And what this ends up being is a spectacular way to reinvest those destructive social forces that can pull a society. The Azandi have no government, no police, apart. Things could be apologised for, but not owned. There could be an idea of a malevolent force, but that malevolent force never came to anything. The entire set of conflicts that so often destroy societies was thereby effectively disarmed in the gap between what the Azandi thought about witchcraft on the general, but actually what they allowed on the particular. And Pritchard is a master of understanding societies like this. His other book on the Noah was a famous book in anthropology about what happens to societies that don't have governments at all, how they manage their affairs. And it is all about this movement between the general and the particular. Now, why does this matter to us? Well, it strikes me that we have lost this ability. But let me explain. Society, as I said, exists in thinking about the gap between what people say they do and what they do. And politicians, well, no, rather terrorists, I mean true terrorists, agents of terror, be they Trump or Farage or Hitler, all make the same, or St. Just, or for that matter, Lenin, all make the same move. They all forget the difference between the general and the particular. They're like comedians whose jokes get taken seriously. They enact their terror. Promises then that they said they would do, they do. Heaven help you, after all, from a politician who's not flexible enough to change what they want to do when faced with a society that cannot do it. That way Robespierre lay. And why does this matter? Well, over the last 20 years, whole new organisations, new ways of understanding society have necessarily have to emerge as the internet puts all kinds of people who were never in contact. All sorts of societies, movements, thoughts become possible. And the traditional ways that they were contained within societies, clubs, social networks, class systems just don't apply, because the connections cut across all those divisions. There simply then aren't any rules to apply to such a situation. It is utterly unique. And without those rules, it becomes very difficult to separate the general from the particular, to know what is going to apply and what isn't going to apply, and when and why. So the far right, as I've said just before, arise through jokes. It all is a joke until suddenly it's not. Or you assume their policies are true, immigrants are awful, and then you discover that you are one. Or that their economic policy will help you until it doesn't, and it's just generalist again. The rules by which we decide what applies to the general and what applies to the Pacific, what applies to me, but what also applies to society, and what oscillates and how you oscillate between them, how you move between things that you are and things that we all are, I think have totally collapsed. And Evans Pritchard is the first person to remind you, if they have collapsed, you're in real problems. Because you're in a society without a government, or at least where government has become restricted, and a lot of people's dealings are in a global sphere, without government, and without clear rules. Is it any wonder that the far right fish in such a space, that they grow and grow in power? After all, the far right exists in exceptionalism, in saying, we, the fill in who you want to fill in, but say the white tribe, are somehow better, the rest are somehow worse. But then also create systems for the oppression of the minority. Systems that appear, that would, if people thought about it and understood it, nobody would vote for, because they would realise in the end they'd come to bite them. But again, the next set of rules happen. They think they are individual and different. The entire system works then, because you can no longer resolve these rules of jokes. You can no longer throw out the poison oracle. There aren't any rules for defining what belongs to society and what belongs to me. And without such rules, it's very difficult to know what to do, or even what to believe, let alone how to act. What can we do about it? Well, I'm afraid, and Pritchard, as with the structuralists everywhere, doesn't solve that problem. He merely explains to you why it is a problem. Oh, no doubt. And he doesn't do that because he treats his societies as if they're ahistorical. I should probably say that. No doubt in time, solutions emerge. Our problem is, do we have time? And if we don't have time, is just accepting that this is a problem enough to allow us to understand how to solve it? Well, I hope so, because that's what we've got.